Okay, so this is our fourth part in the biotechnology lecture. Again, keep in mind all the different things we've been talking about with biotechnology, the positives, the potential negatives, the multitude of applications of this field of biology. So it's not just biology, though. Biology, chemistry, agriculture, computer science, lots and lots of different areas come together to create the field of biotechnology. And again, the idea is that it's permeated into our lives that we can't get by without it. We are dependent upon biotechnology in our daily lives and the basic survival and essence of our species. So last lecture we were talking about how biotechnology is used in agriculture. We were talking about examples of food grown in Illinois that is produced through biotechnology, like the BT corn, the Roundup Ready soybeans. Both of these are major crops in Illinois, major economic aspects in Illinois that is using biotechnology. So yeah, if you guys have an interest in this field, there's huge opportunities. You think about ADM and Monsanto and Pioneer and all these different seed companies. They need biologists with biotechnology backgrounds to help them develop the next generation of corn and the next generation of soybeans, and how do we genetically engineer these crops to grow bigger with smaller amounts of nutrients, to be more efficient. So just phenomenal opportunities right in our own backyard because of Illinois primarily being an agricultural state. Now, on the global level, lots of examples, but a big one to mention here is this stuff called golden rice. Now, we don't see this a lot in the United States, but when we get out of the U.S. and we go to Central America, we go to Asia, think about, good Lord, how many people in Asia and India and Central America that primarily depend upon rice as a main supplement, a main nutrient. And the challenge with rice is there's some nutrients there, but it's not always able to deliver all of the vitamins and the nutrients. And vitamin A is a big vitamin that's important for optimal health. Well, if people have nutritional deficiencies, that leads to a lot of health problems. So what was created was this thing called the Golden Rice Project. And check out the link. So you guys hit that tab, it should link out to the Golden Rice Project to get more information. But what was done is the rice was genetically engineered to be able to produce vitamin A. Change the color, that's why we call it the Golden Rice Project, but it supplies now the vitamin A that a lot of people are lacking when they have a poor diet. So it's made a big difference nutritionally for a lot of people to have this golden rice available. Okay? So like I said, there's lots and lots of uses for biotechnology in agriculture. When we go into the animal world, same thing. Lots of examples, lots of different uses. I'd encourage you guys look into different animals that we're eating, that we're raising domestically, that we're using commercially, etc., and look at how that particular breed of animal was created. Sometimes they're transgenic, other times it's just selective breeding. But for example here, to make a transgenic animal, take the gene, in this case a human gene, to produce a clotting factor or to produce a certain growth hormone or whatever it is. Take that gene from the person, from a human, cut the gene out. So you remove the DNA from the cell, you chop the DNA up, use electrophoresis to sort it out, you isolate the gene, you use a vector to get the gene into the egg, and there's a donor goat up here that's donating the egg. You inject that gene into the egg, you take the egg, you insert the egg into a mama goat who's going to develop the egg. So instead of the egg developing into a goat in a petri dish, it's done inside of a surrogate mother. The egg develops, the goat gives birth, and the goat that is born is called the transgenic goat. And when that goat produces milk, Goat's a mammal, provided it's a female goat, which that can get genetically engineered to make sure. But baby or young female goat here, who is transgenic, now produces milk, and that milk can contain whatever this gene was supposed to tell the animal's body to do. So the example, let me go to the next slide, is clotting factor. So individuals who are hemophiliacs, so if we go back to the genetics lecture, we talked about hemophilia, how it's a pleiotropic trait. One gene causes all of these different problems because of hemophilia. It's the bleeder's disease. You don't clot your blood, so that's a big, big problem. We talked about that again back in genetics with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. If you're not clotting your blood, that's a life-threatening issue. So now we have goat milk that contains a clotting factor. And when the goat produces the milk, because of the gene being inserted into it, the milk contains a clotting factor. The person who is hemophiliac drinks the milk, they now have the clotting factor in their body. So it's a way to make a difference in people's lives. So again, I encourage you guys to look more into this topic. There's some great things that we're doing with biotechnology and genetic engineering. You know, the mouse on the left, genetically engineered to be bigger than the mouse on the right. Positive? Well, in mice, maybe not a big deal. But imagine somebody who is considered genetically a dwarf. Can we change their genes and use biotechnology to allow them to grow to normal size? If you look at the fish, all right, genetic modified salmon, farm-raised salmon, both fish at 18 months of age, huge difference. The genetically modified salmon grows almost twice as big in the same amount of time. Huge difference. So if we're looking at food production for a human population that will hit 8 to 10 billion in the next 20 to 30 years, you need to grow more food faster. Genetic modification is how we're doing it. Accelerate the growth rate, increase the maximum size the animal can become. Boom, there you go. But is it a good thing? That's what we're not sure of because it's not been, we don't have long-term data on this. The cow up top, she is genetically modified to increase the size of her udder, which means she can produce more milk than your non-genetically modified cow. So again, good? Sure, if you're a farmer and I have 100 dairy cows and I can increase my milk production by 30% by genetically modifying the animals, same number of animals, same space, more milk means I can sell more milk, which means my profit margin goes up. I'm a happy farmer here. But what is unclear, and this is the big uncertainty, when consumers, and that's everybody listening to the lecture, that's myself included, my family, your family, etc., when consumers are eating these products and drinking that genetically modified milk and consuming that corn from genetically modified corn and soybeans, etc., what is that doing to us? That is what we're not sure of. What are the long-term potential consequences? We just have no idea. So something I always like to encourage you guys to do, look at your high school graduation picture of your entire class. How many of the guys have beards? How many of the women are very mature or developed, very maturely developed? That's the right way to explain it and say it correctly. Compared to when your parents graduated high school or when your grandparents graduated high school. So you start looking at people and look at how this is changing our population. Each generation seems to mature faster physically mature faster. You see kids and young adults, I should say, in junior high, you see 8th grade boys with mustaches and beards. A lot of that is because of the food we're eating. If we're increasing the growth rate of a cow or a salmon, we're adding these extra hormones into them to get them to accelerate their growth rate and maturing faster, we're consuming those same things when we eat the animal. When we eat these things, we're consuming those hormones because they don't go into the cow's body and then just disappear. It's retained in the animal's flesh, and that's what we eat. When we go and eat a hamburger and you're eating wheat and tomatoes and lettuce and beef, you're getting a lot of genetically modified foods. So most of what we eat today is from genetically modified organisms. And it is possible, very, very challenging, but it's possible to say, all right, wait a minute, I want to find foods that are not genetically modified. You can do it, but it is a little bit more challenging. It's available. Unfortunately, it also costs a lot more because it's a smaller market. And most consumers, myself included, we're looking for price. I want the cheapest. And the cheapest usually means mass production, which usually means genetic modification. So I just really want to encourage you guys, look into this issue, weigh out the pros and cons, make educated decisions when you're out there buying food, buying groceries, going to dinner. Think about what you're eating and what is the potential for what you're eating. What's the potential impact on you health-wise based upon what we're eating. Now, all these different plants and animals and organisms that we genetically modify, there is concern about what could they do in the wild with natural populations. That's a huge issue with these genetically modified salmon. When they get out of the farm, where the enclosures where they're raised, and they get into the wild, they can have some significant consequences, usually negative. They tend to outcompete native salmon, non-genetic modified salmon, and can definitely pressure and compromise native species. So what is in place are these safety guidelines for transgenic organisms. And the guidelines are, transgenic organisms are not, put the big not, are not supposed to be able to breed in the wild. The idea is to not allow them to reproduce naturally in the wild. Stop the reproduction. It's controlled, it's contained, it's restricted. But, like they said in Jurassic Park, nature always finds a way. So we are seeing, there's abundant evidence of this, we're seeing situations in which genetically modified organisms, plants and animals, are crossbreeding with wild populations. And now it's completely changing the dynamics of those wild populations. So Roundup Ready soybeans, Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready wheat, and all those different crops, those genes for resistance are now being found in the wild populations of weeds and different plants around the fields where those crops, where the corn and the soybeans are grown. Because plants cross-pollinate, whether it's a bee that carries it from one plant to another, from one species to a different species, or the wind blows the pollen out, those genes are spreading. And that is changing those natural native populations. We don't know what the potential change will be, what the potential consequences. Maybe it'll be a good thing. That's the hope. That's the fingers crossed, oh, I really hope this is actually a beneficial change, but the concerns are there may be negative changes. And what will be the long-term consequences of this, we just don't know. But biotechnology, definitely a very exciting field. It's a field that is never going to stay stable. It's always changing, always developing, always new stuff. So if you like to be on the cutting edge of new science, look into biotechnology. I'd encourage you guys, get involved in the field. Huge opportunities. UIS, University of Illinois in Champaign, nearly every major school has something going with biotechnology. If you're interested in the biotechnology side of people, check out our next lecture. We're going to talk about the Human Genome Project and genomics, and that's more of a direct, let's look at what we're doing with people in regards to biotechnology and genetic engineering with people. So we'll talk about that in our next lecture.